My friends, brace yourselves as we get ready for Operation Olise. Today we discuss the massive reports surrounding our contacts and efforts made to sign Crystal Palace's star winger. So I hope you guys are excited. I hope you guys are happy with the news. If you are, you know where that like button is, man. Share your thoughts and opinions on the story, and don't forget to watch all the latest videos I've dropped as well. Sit back, relax, and let's get through today's big reports of Michael Olise. Now, quick apologies, sorry for such a late upload. Last night I actually hit a play with the bass, so you know I've got duties outside of the channel. It gets a bit hard sometimes being a one-man army, but at least now that I'm tackling the story now, there's a lot more context, insight and news behind reports. But it's quite interesting with the story because there's unofficial reports and there's equally official reports from the heavy hitting journalists. But let's start with the unofficial news, because I've been hearing for a while now that Olise wants us. He wants to remain in London. I keep stressing the sentimental advantages that we have over other clubs, and you know, he wanted to sign for us last summer. It didn't work out, but he is still open to making the move this summer. And unofficially, there is an agreement. There is an understanding that something can happen and he wants to move. So this is big news. But now let's discuss journalist reports, starting with David Ornstein. And he reveals that now official contact has been made, and that's good that this news can finally be, made public, which is reassuring. He reports that this summer we are doing things properly, and we've asked Crystal Palace for permission first to hold talks with Michael Olise. Now, it's been reported that Crystal Palace prefer for interested parties to strike a deal with them first before talking to the player. And I think for a talent this big, you're not going to make any mistakes like what we did last summer, right? But anyway, Olise is one of the most in-demand wingers in the world. And we have to make sure we do things right, because not only are Man United, Man City showing interest, but clubs like Newcastle and clubs like Bayern Munich have all expressed a desire to make a move happen. At the moment, Olise is protected by a 60 million release clause, and it seems like we are more than happy and prepared to meet and match this clause and offer. This now takes us forward to reports coming out from Matt Law, some very big reports. We have even more context to get through, because he reports that we're confident that we don't have to pay more than any Champions League clubs to sign Michael Olise. Now, to give you guys the context, essentially, there's still no clarity behind, exactly how this release clause can be activated, because some reports suggest that this 60 million release clause value is only for Champions League clubs. Now, this naturally would work against us. So the fact that we're confident that this won't matter, that is pretty reassuring. Unofficially, we have the blessing from Olise that he wants to move, but at the moment we must strike a deal with Crystal Palace. And because we must strike a deal first, it means that we have a bit more time now to find creative solutions and alternatives to strike a deal. And Matt Law reports that we are open to offering players in exchange for this deal. And he's given us a few examples of players that could be offered. You're looking at Kaside, you're looking at Trevor Chalobah, Broja. And he even suggests that Crystal Palace may make inquiries for Noni Madueke. At the moment, we do not know if Crystal Palace would accept these terms, but the reality is we want to get this deal done ASAP. We don't want to waste any time, because it has been reported that Enzo Maresca wants as close to a finished squad as possible for the start of pre-season. As we know already, he's giving the squad homework to get ready for preparation for pre-season. He doesn't want to waste any single time whatsoever. Maresca is already deep in pre-season preparations, and he wants to make sure that once this squad arrives on the first day, July 1st, everyone knows exactly what the plan is, how they're going to move, and how to get ready. So if the players must step up, I think the club must equally step up as well and try to finalize at least the big deals before the window ends. Because I think to myself, because imagine if Pochettino, for example, had that luxury to work with Caicedo from the beginning of pre-season. I think you're looking at a pretty different player last season, because he had a slow start to life with us for the first half of the season for very natural reasons. No pre-season, a few small injuries as well, but once he got past that and was at his physical best, you could see a difference in the second half of the season. So we can't afford to make that mistake for Enzo Maresca. So my friends, that's all the latest stories surrounding Michael Olise. And the BBC revealed that within Olise's release clause, percentages are owed to Reading, They are owed to Crystal Palace and they're owed to the player himself. So there are going to be some difficulties and complications when it comes to finalizing the agreement. I'm a bit curious to see how we could use players in exchange to maybe bring the price down, but I don't think it's impossible. And maybe it could involve doing separate deals, which in total combines reduce fees all round. So now I want to discuss this player exchange news because I find this quite fascinating, and I'd love to hope and think that this will be the major part of this potential deal which allows us to complete things and sign Michael Olise. Because now I don't know if you guys have had similar thoughts, but have you ever thought that, let's say if Eze and Olise left Crystal Palace, like the best replacements for them would probably be Khans and Madueke, Tom and Jerry. We know that these guys are boys. They have a great relationship off the field and on the field, but sadly we haven't seen them together on the field as much as we'd like to. Now, we spent big money on signing both of them, like for a combined fee of around £50 million. So for those financial reasons, I can't really imagine that we'd be necessarily open to doing business like that in terms of exchanging them, unless Crystal Palace prefer to do separate deals. But then I personally think they may be out their price range, because if you sell Noni, you must get a profit from the original 40 million you invested. And I think with Khans, the kid has such big potential. It was a massive shame for him last season that he had those injuries at the wrong time, because Pochettino was believing in this kid, and we got a small sample pool and glimpse of the talents and qualities he could bring. So I don't know, but I think with other player exchange options, let's go through them. I think the unrealistic ones straight off the bat would be Chalobah and Armando Broja. I'm sorry, the club can't be forcing these guys to make moves to lesser clubs. Chalobah has said, I'm only leaving if I get an enticing offer from a club that is playing European football. And when you were getting offers from Italy, from Germany, whilst you were injured, and the moves only fell off because you weren't fit enough in time for the January window, you're not going to drop your standards, especially when you ended the season as one of the strongest players in our squad for the final few games of the season. So I can't imagine that, even though I'm sure Crystal Palace would love Chalobah. And in the case of Armando Broja, I think that with someone like him, he must be sold for pure profit. And I can't imagine he'd be excited at the prospects of fighting for a position alongside Mateta. I think he'd be a bit burnt by his time at Fulham last season. And maybe if you found a creative solution with Aston Villa for John Duran, but even then I think we don't have to exchange a player to get that deal done. I think Broja must be a sale that brings in pure profit of at least 25 million bare minimum. So these are two players I'm not looking at. But for other interesting options, I'm looking at Datro Fofana. Could Crystal Palace possibly be interested in him? Because as we've learned already this summer, we would be open to offers for Datro Fofana. Now I must say, I think it's a bit of a shame and I'm a bit disappointed. Now on one hand, I can understand why we would, and I think we have to understand this. I've seen these conversations on Twitter comparing John Duran and Datro Fofana because they have the same goals, the same minutes, but they're not the same striker. Datro Fofana doesn't have that aerial presence. He doesn't offer that type of ability. He's more of like a, winger style, forward player that plays on the ground. And I think we have so many players like this in the squad. So we need a different profile as our backup striker. I think that's obvious. But equally then, I think it would be disappointing that after only 1 year out on loan, we'd be open to selling him already. At least give this kid another loan move, right? Because I think to myself, we've signed him for 10 million. We're not going to get 30 million for Datro Fofana, or even maybe 20 million. So what is the point of making moves like this if you're barely flipping these guys for big profit? I think he is someone that needs another consistent loan spell for another season first. Then you assess him, and if you don't think he's what you need, at least you're bringing in more money for a sale. So I would be disappointed by this, and I don't think it reflects well on the strategy of, signing players to flip them from profit, because we know that with some of these buys we're making, they will be flipped. But if you've already spent big money on them to begin with, how does it make sense to then move them on as soon as possible? So I don't know, if Fofana was at Brighton and never signed for us, he'd probably be in a better place in his career right now, which is interesting. But to move on from him, I think there are two excellent options that could get this deal over the line. And I think if there was one player that I can't imagine Crystal Palace saying no to, already knowing the fact that they've expressed interest in the player, knowing the fact that he perfectly fits their model and strategy, and knowing the fact that this could be easily agreed upon, that player would have to be Omari Hutchinson, because he's literally the same stylistic replacement for Michael Olise, because Omari Hutchinson under McKenna was allowed that license to roam infield from wide areas. That's how McKenna's system kind of works. And he's shown at Ipswich that he has that match-winning capabilities. He can play teammates and he can score goals. And I think working under Glasner, where he could have similar creative freedoms in terms of positions he can roam in, he would be the best possible option, because he perfectly fits their transfer model of signing the very best top talents from the division below. I can't imagine Hutchinson says no to Palace, knowing that they're one of the few clubs in the league where if you excel there, you'll most likely play at the highest level at some point. At the moment, Crystal Palace have expressed interest in Hutchinson last season. They've also looked at Hull City's incredibly skillful winger in Philogene as well. You think to yourself, with a deal like this, there's something mutually beneficial for both parties. Crystal Palace get maybe a first option on signing Omari Hutchinson, because this is a kid that's in big demand. Hutchinson could equally agree to not signing for Crystal Palace because European clubs are looking at him. Clubs that have Europa League football, clubs that have Champions League football. He may decide, you know what, I can play at a high level right now. So Crystal Palace may need us, in fact, to help broker this deal to move Hutchinson their way. And I'd have to say, to make this the icing on the cake, to make sure this deal gets absolutely finalized, the other thing I would do is exchange a player on loan, and the player I would offer on loan would actually be Chukwuemeka, because I think at his age right now, he just needs a consistent season of minutes. I think the club believe in him. He's on a big contract. I think he's earning like 100,000 a week. That is not a contract you're giving away for nothing or giving away easily, right? And already he kind of broke into the team last season under Pochettino when Nkunku got injured, but injuries then stopped him from really progressing. So there's a big talent here. And I think that if he had a consistent season in the Prem, I think Crystal Palace could be the best option for him, because he could also play with that fluidity from Glasner. Look how Eze really prospered and thrived playing that way alongside him. And I think this way Chukwuemeka gets to remain in London. He's not uprooting his whole life, but he's doing that knowing that, okay, I want to play now. I need this for my career. And Palace is probably the best option for young players like myself to like hone my skills and get ready for my long-term future with Chelsea Football Club. So as I'm saying, I'm offering Omari Hutchinson, I'm offering Carnes on loan, and maybe a tiny bit of money to get this deal over the line. And if it works out this way, this will be one of the best deals we've done, because I've got so much faith, confidence, and belief in the signing of Michael Olise. This is one of the top wingers, not only in the country, but across Europe. We can't afford to miss out on having two Cole Palmer level talents in the team together. We can't do that. Imagine having these two playing together, with Nkunku maybe on the left hand side, and having depth and squad rotation options like Madueke and Madueke. And Madueke I'm still keeping, because let's not forget, we're injury FC, and you know at some point in the future, someone's going to break down at the wrong time. And Madueke shows that he is someone that wants to fight for his spot and rises to the challenge. And he's also one of the best young wingers in the league, because this guy's carrying stats are already up there in terms of the highest percentiles. So I think we are building one of the most interesting, devastating attacks we've seen as a fan base ever since we had guys like, you know, Hazard, Oscar, Willian, Pedro, etc, etc. And I personally believe this is the level of ambition we must show now if we want to climb up the table, guarantee CL football, and start fighting for this league. So my friends, that is everything Operation Olise. Share your thoughts and opinions. Are you happy? Are you optimistic? Are you confident? Let us all know. And on that note, my guys and girls, I'm Nini FC, this is BlueLionsTV. I'll see you all soon with another video. Cool.